My presentation on India. I chose the subject Muslims in India, and I chose the article Growing Up Muslim in India. Even a secular name didn't spare me the stereotypes and discrimination by Sahil Wajid, published in Scroll.in in December 2017. With the article, Sahil Wajid portrays how it is like to grow up in India as a Muslim minority by sharing his own experiences. He starts by telling what it was like to be a Muslim in India, first as a child, and then later in college, and then at work. The reader discovers that a person with a Muslim background crosses several challenges in the Indian society. And then I put the article in the rhetorical pentagon. The writer is obviously Sahil Wajid, who is a Muslim who grew up in India. And then I said the audience is the world, and maybe in particular the population of India. And then I said the circumstances is growing up as a Muslim in India. And then I said the topics were suppression, minority, discrimination, and religion. And I think that the intention of the article is to inform and show people how it is like to grow up in India as a Muslim. Yeah, and then I analyzed this language, and the speaker wants to inform the reader about his life as a Muslim who grew up in India, and probably to open a discussion on how Muslims are treated by the people in India and the Indian society. The language that the speaker uses in the article is very casual, since it doesn't contain any advanced words or terms. Sahil shares his personal experiences and attempts to portray them in a way so the reader can picture the episode in their head. He does this by using many verbs and not so many nouns. For instance, it says, at my Delhi school one day, a 7-year-old in my class found out that my middle initial A stood for Abdul. He declared it was something to be ashamed of. And besides using many verbs, Sahil also involves quotes from dialogues he has experienced. For instance, it says, to my surprise, the doctor looked up and smiled. Married candidate, he asked, beaming. In this way, it is easier for the reader to picture the experiences that he mentions. To underline the critique against the population of India, he uses irony in one of his headlines. One of the headlines says, work was worshipped literally. And in the following passage, he tells that his colleagues made fun of his religion by pointing out that the law gave him permission to have more than one wife, and in this way, the headline comes off quite ironic for the reader and maybe a bit provocative. To express the message of the article clearer, Sahil uses several forms of appeal. The first form of appeal is found in the headline of the article that says, Growing Up a Muslim in India. Even a secular name didn't spare me the stereotypes and discrimination. So the headline indicates that the article contains a statement from a Muslim who has grown up in India. Sahil's message with the article is to show how oppressed the Muslim minority is in India, and to emphasize this message, he uses his own experiences as a Muslim who grew up in India, and in this way he appeals to ethos because he appears as a reliable source in this subject. Besides appealing to ethos, he also appeals to pathos. For instance, Sahil tells that as a child, other kids would bully him because of his religious background, and this has made him highly insecure of himself, and he decides to hide his Muslim identity from other people. His mother gave him a secular first name so it wouldn't be difficult to meet other people, but Sahil's middle and last name reveals that he has a Muslim background, and this has made him lie about the meaning of the A that his middle name is shortened to. Instead of telling people that the A stands for Abdul, he says it stands for Gawal, which is an Indian name. And by sharing these personal and sad stories, Sahil is able to influence the reader's emotions. They will feel pity for him as he comes off innocent and unjustly treated. Yeah, and then I decided to put the article in perspective to the text An Awadi by Catherine Boo, because the main theme of the article is similar to one of the themes that are in An Awadi. Yeah, both of the texts throw light on the oppression that the Muslims are subjected to in the Indian society. Yeah, and in the novel An Awadi, the main character Abdul is a Muslim, and many of the struggles that Abdul faces is similar to the one that Sahil describes in his article. For instance, it is harder for Abdul to get a job because he belongs to the untouchable caste, and especially because he's a Muslim. And his brother's friend is, despite his lower caste, able to get a job at a hotel because he's a Hindu. So yeah, this oppression from the society, Sahil also mentions is in his article. For instance, Sahil mentions that it was harder for him to find a place to rent because of his Muslim background, which is revealed in his full name. Only a few were honest enough to tell me to my face that the name was the real problem, that the prospects of a Muslim's resident was anathema to others living in the building and the neighbors. So the struggles that Abdul crosses as a Muslim in an Indian society is similar to the ones that Sahil mentions. Yeah, and this was my presentation on India.